Why Rafael Fiziev is an absolute nightmare matchup for Mateusz Gamrot. With Fiziev and Gamrot being matched up as the main event during this upcoming weekend's fight night, a lot of people are extremely excited to see what does end up happening, as both of these guys have been very impressive at the lightweight division, and the winner of this matchup would just get that much closer to an eventual title shot. But although on paper and based on the betting odds, people think this is a relatively close matchup, in my opinion, I actually think Fiziev is an absolute nightmare matchup for Gamrot. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy MMA, I make opinionative MMA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it. Ever since Mateusz Gamrot made it to the UFC, he's looked extremely impressive. As in his relatively short UFC career, he's not only fought the best of the best, but he's also beat a lot of the UFC's top talent at the lightweight division. Like for example, more recently, Gamrot has pretty impressive victories over guys like Jalen Turner and also Arman Tsarukyan. Now, one thing I will say about the Tsarukyan fight, it was extremely close, and a lot of people, including myself, thought Arman won, but either way, those wins are on his record for Gamrot, and it is certainly very impressive to even have a competitive fight with those kind of guys. And in my opinion, the reason for why Gamrot has been able to be so effective so far in his young UFC career is due to his overall style. Now, he has somewhat of a style that we've been starting to see a little bit more of lately, but his style is he's good enough on the feet, he's not necessarily extremely dangerous, although he has some power, but mostly where he does his damage is just consistently shooting in and getting takedowns. And even if his opponent gets up and breaks out of that, Gamrot would utilize his relatively good stand-up abilities to keep the opponents guessing and then shoot in after that and just get takedown after takedown. And at the end of the day, even if his opponents are able to get up, really what Gamrot is doing is he's trying to tire out his opponents until eventually he's able to take them down and hold them down and then do a ton of damage that way. And in my opinion, that kind of style is extremely effective for guys who aren't necessarily as dangerous as some other guys in the UFC. Because although Gamrot does have a couple of TKO victories on his UFC record, and he certainly does have power in his hands, I just don't think he has the type of power and the type of stand-up ability that some of these other guys, including Rafael Fiziev, have at the lightweight division. So I do think the fact that he consistently shoots and tries to tire out his opponents and then could somewhat mix in his stand-up abilities within his game is actually extremely effective and is a huge reason for why he's been able to be so effective so far. But now let's move on to Rafael Fiziev. So similar to Gamrot, ever since Fiziev made it to the UFC, he's been extremely impressive, as not only has he been going up against the UFC's lightweight top talent, but also he's been beating basically everybody. As over the years, Fiziev has had victories over Moicano, Mark Jerkasey, Brad Riddell, Bobby Green, and even Rafael dos Anjos. And all those victories that I just mentioned are extremely impressive, and Fiziev was able to beat most of those guys by TKO, which just makes it that much more impressive and really goes to show how truly dangerous this guy is. Now, he did end up losing his last matchup against Justin Gaethje, which a lot of people thought would be a close matchup, but most people, including myself, thought Fiziev would eventually be able to win that matchup against Gaethje. And although Fiziev did look really good in that first round, as the fight started to progress, Fiziev started to tire out a little bit, and Gaethje started to pick up some tendencies that Fiziev was showing and started to fight much better, as Gaethje ended up finding a way to win a close second round and also ended up dominating in the third round. But in my opinion, although Fiziev did end up losing to Gaethje, I do think at the end of the day, fighting a guy who is a former interim champ and really one of the best of the lightweight division is always going to be a great experience for any of these young guys, but especially a guy like Fiziev. Now he knows what issues that he does have, like his gas tank somewhat, but also some other issues that he was facing, like dipping his head a little too much, and now going forward in his career, he can look to adjust some of those weak points that he does have to eventually make him a better fighter. And in my opinion, I think that's exactly what he's going to do, and I think we're going to see a much better Rafael Fiziev in this matchup against Gamrot than we did against Gaethje. But now let's move on to this actual matchup between Fiziev and Gamrot, and let's get into my prediction for it. So as I mentioned before, both of these guys are obviously extremely talented and they're extremely good at their strengths. And in my opinion, both of these guys do have paths to victory. But at the end of the day, I think there's a couple of factors in this matchup that would eventually determine the winner of it. And the first factor that I want to touch upon is Rafael Fiziev's ability to keep the fight on the feet. Now, Now on the feet, I think Fiziev has a relatively large advantage. He's extremely quick, he does have a lot of power, he has incredible kicks to the legs, but even better kicks to the body and even the head at times. I think he's the overall more dangerous fighter on the feet for sure, and I just think he's going to have his way with Gamrot on the feet. But as I mentioned before, Gamrot is an extremely talented wrestler, and he definitely has a really nice ability to take a lot of his opponents to the ground. Like for example, in his last matchup, he was able to take Jalen Turner down a ton. Now Jalen Turner isn't necessarily known for his great wrestling, but at the end of the day, Turner was significantly bigger than Mateusz Gamrot, so the fact that he was able to take him down at will and even hold him down at times while being the significantly smaller guy is extremely impressive, and something that we need to consider in this matchup against Fiziev. But with all that being said, Rafael Fiziev has not only been one of the best guys in terms of his takedown defense at the lightweight division, but really in the entire UFC. So in my opinion, this is going to be an extremely interesting matchup of a guy who has incredible wrestling ability and another guy who has insane takedown defense. So I think a huge determining factor on who ends up winning this matchup is going to come down to that factor that I just mentioned. If Fiziev is able to keep the fight on the feet for the most part, I think he's going to win relatively easily, but if Gamrot is able to take the fight to the ground, I definitely think he has a chance to end up winning this matchup. But even besides that, I think there are a couple of other factors that play into this, like for example, how will Fiziev's gas tank play out throughout the entire fight, because even besides the Gaethje matchup, Fiziev has been known to gas a little bit as a fight does progress in multiple different matchups. But another factor would be how will Gamrot's chin hold up, because in his 3 previous matchups, he's been dropped in all 3 of those fights, and in some of those matchups, he was even dropped multiple times, like most recently against Jalen Turner, he was dropped 2 or 3 different times. So when you're going up against a guy like Rafael Fiziev, who's not only extremely quick, significantly quicker than all 3 of those guys that Gamrot previously went up against, but also has a ton of power and is also extremely diverse on the feet, you just question, will Gamrot be able to take some of the shots that Fiziev throws his way? Because in my opinion, I think some of those shots are going to land flush eventually. But at the end of the day, to give my official prediction for this matchup, I do think Fiziev is eventually going to be able to find the TKO in either round 2 or round 3. I think he's just going to be a little too much. I think he's going to do really nice work with the body kicks, with the leg kicks. I think he's going to be able to stop a lot of the takedowns, and I just think on the feet, Gamrot just isn't as good and isn't as dangerous as Fiziev, and Fiziev is just going to eventually find that shot as the fight does progress. And in my opinion, the main reason for why I think Fiziev is a nightmare matchup for Gamrot is just due to the fact that he's one of the best guys in the entire UFC at takedown defense. And if Gamrot isn't able to take the fight to the ground, I just don't think he's going to have that much success in this matchup. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Rafael Fiziev is a nightmare matchup for Mateusz Gamrot, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.